Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Ride and Bomb Boy event, in which the Bomb Rider is added to the game. This week has a billion things going on, a lot of very interesting things. We have the entirety of the event schedule for next month, event calendar that seems like they're going to be posting now every single month, so we have that for the entirety of August to go over briefly. We have ourselves an invasion that is now expanded, raids, invasions, Tower of Doom, and journey events as of version 7.0 now have 16 tiers instead of 12, getting a bunch of additional loot that we'll go over once we get over there, mostly being the shiny cards and such, to be able to go and upgrade things. We also have ourselves a great gold farmer. Basically, the new gold farming meta has just dropped as of today with this new troop. And yeah, a lot of things. So let's start from the top and go with the current new event troop, the one available through Glory. Comes in with red, purple arcanes if you need to upgrade anything related to it. And similar to every goblin, has a automatic extra turn, so that by default makes it at least somewhat usable. Very situational though, as obviously there are much better options out there, but it explodes a row and gains an extra turn, so not horrible. Of course, only gains half the mana for all the things exploded, but can be a nice little board control with the auto extra turn and just be able to get into another 4 times and be able to line that way off the explosion. It does have a little bit of skull dodge, but for the most part, not really going to be used that often. It's not bad, it's just not good enough to really make it into many teams. Earlier on in the game, if nothing else, especially if you use event keys this week, could get some decent value. Speaking of which, of course, event key drop table this week is for that of Zacian. As far as the Zacian drop table is concerned, there are several troops not in drop table. Those include the Fool, which is only in the Volky drop table. However, we got a Volt event this weekend already. We just had one like a couple weeks ago before we went on the trip, and we already have one again. It looks like it's going to be a bit more consistent for Volt events too, about getting one about every month. But the ones not in event key drop table are the Fool, the 4 faction troops as per usual, and I believe that is it. So just those 5. As far as things that are good in the drop table, basically everything. Every single thing from this kingdom, for the most part, is particularly the goblins, have extra turn. Oh, sorry, there's one other thing not in drop table. This new Slughoarder from the invasion itself is currently only from the evasion event from Gems, so you also can't get Slughoarder. So Slughoarder, the Fool, and the 4 faction troops. But yeah, he's really good, but unfortunately not in event key drop table. He's specifically from good old invasion. But yeah, Zacian, really great place to be throwing event keys. One of the best times you could be throwing event keys. Almost every single thing that you could be upgrading through those event keys tends to be pretty good. Most of them have automatic extra turn, even if their ability is rather average. And it has 3 really good mythics. One more so than the other 2, but all of them are very usable. High King Iron Gut being the most noteworthy one, being its insta-kill devour while having auto extra turn, gains a lot of stats, has a 100% devour rate in Underworld, even outside of Underworld with things like Bane of Mercy recently. A couple months ago, you can just basically get max attack and just start going from there. Overall, really great troop and particularly good for Underworld. Next we have the good old Flaming Ani. While there are other better mana accumulators out there, he is a pretty good mana accumulator that has specifically Resummon. Is probably the biggest gimmick of him if you're bothering to use him. He is a mass mana accumulator that can constantly keep resummoning basically every single turn. So that is pretty good. He's basically a one-man army in that sense, even if your entire team dies around him. He just keeps summoning goblins, and goblins being one of the better summons in the game due to them all having extra turns, while getting mass mana accumulator from him can be really good at not losing. So he has that going for it. You can also 4 times burn the enemy team, though of course you can also burn your own team. For the most part, not really much of a benefit or a downside, but it's mostly just used pretty much solely for its ability there. And other than that, we have ourselves the Fairy Godmother, most notable being the best and pretty much only viable Wish Gem mechanic user. It has a ability to extra turn, create Wish Gems off its ability, and also has a chance every single turn to, at a pretty high rate, to end up creating a Wish Gem on the board. A Wish Gem giving either 1, 2, 3, or 4 of your allies full mana, though there is a 1 in 5 chance it will also give all your allies and all enemies full mana. And of course, if you don't happen to take your own Wish Gems, the enemy can also take it for their value to gain a bunch of mana. Really high risk, high reward mana accumulator. Its main gimmick is that it can full mana to things that are fully blocked. So if you're using 2 things that have like 30 mana costs that are fully blocked on their colors, you can simply feed it with the Wish Gems, and as long as you have something that can destroy it consistently, you can just go down that route. Overall, there are other mana accumulators that can be used, however, it is worth considering, particularly on teams that have a lot of blockage and just really high mana costs, as it completely fills them up to full. But really risky to use in PvP-like situations, like Guild War and such, but can be worthwhile in like Explore 12 or even Underworld, where battles aren't as well composed. as far as what you have to fight, so it's a little bit less punishing to end up using Fairy Godmother compared to running it against the absolute meta, where if you end up giving them full mana, they will just infinite loop on you and you will die. So yeah, very risky to use, but a lot of mana accumulation to be had. So you're mostly just opening for just generic good stuff and to try for one of the mythics that you might want. Of course, 1 in 1,000 or so if you're going to be doing that, but which is about 1 in 3,000 if you're trying for any individual one. But you do eventually end up getting if you want to go throw some of your reserve down to try for some of the better mythics out there. Anyways, aside from that, we have several other things going on throughout the week. Most noteworthy is the new Invasion. So Invasion, Raids, Tower of Doom, and Journey events have been tweaked as of version 7.0, and this is the first time we actually get to see this change. So basically, whenever you use the new troop that is from the reward shop. So this was technically already the case for Journey events, but now it applies to all of them, including like invasions and such. But basically, whenever you use it, you now have 2 times magic with that troop for the week to incentivize you to, you know, use it for the damage. But also earn 2 times score, which is obviously a no-brainer, gaining double the score for using it compared to not using it. If I'm not mistaken, Ascension doesn't matter at all as far as score, so it's not like something like Bounty Hunter, where you have to make sure they're all mythic to maximize on score. Simply just having this on your team, meaning you basically have to buy now tier 2, which is what, 90 gems, I believe? So not too much, 90 gems for that 210 to bring it to the weapon. But yeah, you basically have to spend 90 gems now, as the difference of using that for double points compared to not having double points is a very stark contrast, and it's basically required to use it on your team for how big of a score difference you're going to be getting. So definitely make sure you 100% make sure whatever the event troop is for a given event, raids, invasion, anything these days, that you end up using it. This also applies for weapons. So for Tower of Doom, you actually have to use the new Doom weapon. And I believe we have Tower of Doom next week. Actually, we're going to be going over the event calendar soon. But yeah, Tower of Doom is next week. So next week on Tower of Doom, we're going to be forced to have to use the new ring. So that's going to be a little unfortunate because the rings aren't the best of things, but we'll still be able to slightly build around if nothing else. But yeah, there's going to be a new mechanic now. So for raids, invasion, stuff like that, you have to now use the event troop. For stuff like Tower of Doom, you have to use the weapon, and doing so gives you double the amount of points, which is super ridiculously worth it. Luckily for things like invasion and raids, you're already going to do that. The only one where you really have to go out of your way now is Tower of Doom, because you're already going to be doing that for Journey events. So Tower of Doom is pretty much the most affected mode by this, as you now only have 3 troops instead of 4, and you're forced to have to use the Doom weapon, which also means you're technically forced to have to use Hero class, which isn't that big a deal, but you know, it does slightly change what you are able to build in that mode, whereas things like raids and evasions, it was already going to be on your team anyway, so it's not like you're changing how you're building the team. Anyways, I was going over event key drop table. Actually, yeah, we're going over invasion. Let's go back to invasion. So there's another thing to mention in invasion here. So that's not the only change. The other change is if you go to rewards over here. So the gameplay itself is still the same. Just destroy everything, go kill out all the towers, have your Slughoarder up front, get your billion skull damage and cast damage, just kill everything. However, despite gameplay being the same, the rewards are a bit interesting. So you might notice here, if we go through these, I believe there's one right over here. There are some new rewards now. So right here on stage 10, shiny keys. And normally, of course, the rewards end right here where you get the title. However, if we go a little bit further now, we can end up seeing additional loot. And I'm just now noticing, wow, you do not need that many points. Wow, that is like no points at all. I was expecting these to be like 6,000 here, and then like 8,000, then 10,000, then like 12 or something. But look at this, it goes higher, 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 and you know, higher. And you know, you'd expect that number to be bigger than that number, but no, it's okay, that's actually not bad. I just now noticed that. But yeah, almost the entirety of all 4 of the extra loot is just like only one stage above stage 12. Like, it's basically just going to stage 13 in a sense, because you would need, if it kept going by this pattern, you would need, like, what, about 5,300, 5,200 or so, and that's less points than all 3 of these need, 3,000, yeah, 5,500, so it's basically just stage 13, or, you know, 13 stages, point-wise, as far as how much more you would end up needing. So that's not bad at all. I was expecting this to go way, way higher if it kept scaling by that, but it doesn't. Cool. But anyways, biggest reward here, as you can see, shiny keys. Shiny keys, you also get guaranteed shiny tokens to whatever the new troop is. So for example, the new troop this time is the Slughoarder, so you get 5 shiny tokens towards the Slughoarder, which luckily is exactly enough to get it to the first level, which will bring his mana cost down by 1, so that's pretty cool. You also get a little orb of minions here, so you can upgrade your pets. Also some Dragonite if you still need that for the grind, and a ton of shiny keys on the very last drop. as well as a major orb. So who knows, maybe we'll get lucky on that. So there's another major orb every single week. So yeah, not bad at all. Even some celestials there if you still need it earlier on in the game. Why is it not bringing up the thing? Okay, I guess it just wants to bring up that menu every single time. But yeah, overall, some really great additions. And honestly, you don't really need to do that much as a guild. If anything, you might actually have to do less now that I'm thinking about it. Because putting into consideration a 2-time score, I'm not sure how much these have been scaled, if these even been rescaled at all. I actually don't even remember how many you normally need. But yeah, it should be, honestly, not that hard to end up reaching those. So yeah, not bad at all. And a bunch of extra loot. And this applies to raids, invasions, Tower of Doom, and journey events now. For whatever reason, world events are not affected, to my understanding. World events are still the same 12-stage thing they've always been. However, we won't be getting as many world events compared to how we have been in the past. In the past, we've had like, you know, like 9 weeks in a row, 10 weeks in a row where it'd be like world events. Now it's going to be like once every 4-ish weeks or so. It's definitely not going to be anywhere near as common as it once was. Speaking of which, this is a great transition to go into the new calendar. So this seems like something that they're going to be posting every single week. Now that they've kind of cleaned up the event system in the game, they're now going to be making a post, assumably, every single month that will be basically going over all the things that are going to be happening. Of course, we already had this information through third-party sources, particularly Terran's World is the one I personally generally use. If you just go to terransworld.com and click over to the PC, mobile, or whatever platform you're on, and it'll end up telling you a full list of events that are coming up. Like we can see here, we have a Friday Vault event, stuff like that. Obviously, this isn't the easiest to look at, necessarily. Obviously, it's a really nice resource. However, now the devs themselves are posting a little image for this. So we can end up seeing, like, this week is Invasions, next week is Tower of Doom, Raids. As you can see, almost none of these are World Event. We're not getting a World Event for another 4 weeks. So as you can see, we're getting a lot of these other events where we can end up getting those Shiny Keys, like Tower of Doom, where we'll be forced to use the weapon, but hey, we get Shiny Keys. Raid Boss, where you'll be forced to use the Raid Troop, which we're probably already going to use anyways. And it'd also be the first time we get to fight Catharix, or whatever his name is. Because not only do you fight Zulgoff now, you'll also be having the other guy coming in, and I assume he'll be there for the first raid event we've had since 7.0. So even a few weeks from now, we're still going to be getting some slightly new 7.0 content in a sense. We have the 2-week-long holiday event thingy going on. I can't remember what this is for, but for something. We have a journey event. We have a world event. As you can see what the event week is every single time. So this week is Zhejian, which is pretty noteworthy because you can get Turnip, and the event queue drop table is pretty good. We have Broken Spire. We then have, I forget what that is. We then have Dragon's Claw. Once again, I forget what that... Why did I completely forget that we have Blighted Lands? This weekend we have Vault events and, you know, Bounty Arena. So you can see this to have everything. You can see the pets that are coming up, like whenever we're going to be getting new ones. You can see what all the class events are. Those pretty easy to associate based on the kingdom there. Oh, that one is Nexus. I could tell because that's funny. I know what this is, but I don't know what that is. That's funny because I know this is Elemental, so that is Nexus, and I know this is Geomancer, so that is oh gosh, why do I forget the name of gosh, Hellcrag. That's funny. I know what the hero class symbol is. And from that, I can determine what that one is. So yeah, this is Elemental, so that is Nexus. And this is Geomancer, so that is, wow, why do I already forget the name of that? Hellcrag. That's the most newest kingdom, and I cannot remember it for whatever reason. But yeah, you can just use this to now see it. So if you actually want to get this, the way that you get here is if you go to gemsofwall.com, and we go over to just latest news, you should generally see a post here. So here it is, monthly event calendar. So I assume they're going to be posting this every single month now. And if you just click on this, boom, here's the same resource we were just at, and it just shows you a whole nice little list. Of course, you could already have done this in the past through things like Terran's World and such, but this is a little bit easier to understand as far as what's going on. Also, it's official, so I highly doubt, although you never know, but I highly doubt this would ever be inaccurate since, you know, they're posting it themselves. So I would assume that it would hopefully be correct most of the time. Obviously, Terran's World normally is 2, but it's grabbing it from the files, whereas this is them just specifically saying, like, hey, here's when all the events are. So I assume this will be slightly more accurate in that sense, since this can only ever pull from the files of the game, whereas this is just the devs knowing, like, hey, we're going to be doing this on every single given day. So ideally, this should always be correct, though. Knowing Gems of War devs sometimes, you never know. There could definitely be some mistakes occasionally here. But anyways, yeah, that's a cool calendar. Definitely use it. Pretty nice little resource to figure out what's going on. Officially posted by the devs themselves. Anyways, aside from that, things that we have going on throughout the upcoming week. Tuesday faction event, we have ourselves the Amethrax, most noteworthy, where you get Truffle. Wednesday event, we're going to be having the Goblin bonus pet, which is pretty good. I can't remember if I have it maxed or how recent this is, but it's definitely one of the better pets out there. Goblin bonus, pretty strong. Thursday class event, we have ourselves the Thief Hero class. pretty noteworthy in being one of the better stealthy hero classes. Has insta-kill, has stealthy, has a lot of resummon, mostly using Guild War because of that. Has like 1.5 billion resummons, so you tend to put it in a pretty safe location. Ideally give it like a book or something, and then it just has 1 billion resummons between Bandit, between Hieronif, and I think it has a third too. That isn't used too often, but whenever it gets a kill, I think it summons like that one red purple other rogue, I forget its name. And then this Friday, as we mentioned, we have Vault Event weekend, so great time to go get a bunch of Vault keys, get a bunch of resources, if you've been needing more gems for things like Underspire and such. Speaking of which, Underspire, of course, takes place every single week. We actually just covered a guide video on it last night, so if you didn't catch that, I covered a pretty comprehensive video, just going over some tips and tricks over Underspire. Obviously, the strategy for this is the exact same every single week, so no need to really go over it here. I am going to be going over 2 teams. We're actually going over 10 teams this video, all in the description. But I'm going to go over 2 teams, a higher rarity and a lower rarity. And we'll probably be doing that going every week going forward, just to have a high and low rarity team that you can end up using for the entirety of Underspire, all the way from the beginning, all the way to the end, that you can end up incorporating. So, yeah, same mode as always from the last 2 weeks. We should be having this literally every single week, so we have that. Anyways, aside from that, Soulforge. So, there are a couple things that are pretty noteworthy in Soulforge. Obviously, if you haven't picked up your Catharics yet, definitely a good idea to try allocating resources to eventually get this. You don't have any time frame on this. This is permanently in Soulforge forever, so you can get it next week, you can get it next month, you can get it next year. However, it is advised to eventually get. It is really strong. I wouldn't say it's stronger than Zolgoth, but different. It has its upsides, it has its downsides. Its upsides being that, in theory, if it works perfectly, it is an infinite loop into itself that instantly kills the entire team within like 10 seconds. Or the more realistic thing, it gives the enemy max yellow mana, fairy fires your entire team, curses your entire team, and only gets a single insta-kill. So it does everything between that. Auto win within several seconds, or very much give enemy infinite mana while curse fairy firing your entire enemy team. So he is very volatile, that is for sure. But really good when he works properly. Anyways, as far as normal things in Soulforge that are only available this week until they cycle back around, I'd probably say Scorpius. Scorpius, double killer, really good at poison, curse poison, stuff like that, where you end up double killing. A little bit better as of Bane of Mercy as well, because you can end up doing that into Ariali, and then you can curse poison everything in the game. Well, you know, everything other than that one indestructible trait. However, Impervious can be bypassed, so you don't really have to worry about that many things with immune to poison. It's mostly ran for Explore 12, however, it can be incorporated in a few other modes, even Underworld if you really want to. For the most part, not the best double killer out there, but it is definitely a option if you feel like going down that route. As far as weapons, there's one thing you 100% want to make sure you do not leave this week with. I also think I recommend it in like 5 or 6 different teams this week, as is useful in pretty much every single mode that we have throughout the entire week. And that is Norbert's Turnip. On paper, it seems like nothing, like an average weapon. It just deals some damage to an enemy, boosted by goblins, and then creates a mix of green and red. So if that was the only thing it did, it would probably not be that good. It does have a little bit of a mana drain, so, you know, it makes it a little bit better. However, the main reason this thing is good is it has a perk of gain an extra turn. So any weapon that ever gets this, insanely good. And this, I believe, is currently the only double mana accumulation weapon like this that ends up doing that. Also, that reminds me, I never did check the new weapon. So when we were going over invasion stuff, I actually did forget, because it wasn't posted on the spoiler thingy. Let's see, which one is the new one? I actually don't remember. Type in the word goblin, it boosts based on goblin. So we do get a new weapon if you spend 210 gems or more in the current invasion event. And one thing I wanted to check is, no, it doesn't. Oh, so unlike the turnip and such, it doesn't have auto extra turn. Oh, that's a huge missed opportunity to make this thing insane. But no, this is just kind of average. The summon's good at least though. Random goblins, not bad. But oh, this could have been really broken if it gained auto extra turn. That's a little disappointing. But yeah, just get Norbert's Turnip from the Soulforge. Though I still advise getting this weapon, though not from Soulforge, but rather you can get it for 210 gems from the Invasion event, which I advise doing because you're going to need to spend 90 anyways in order to get the troop. So I might as well spend a little bit extra to do the 210 to get the weapon. I also went a little bit further just to save and just have a little bit more sigils as well, just going up to tier 4. And of course they have that little bundle thing now. If you go all the way to tier 6, you get like a little orb. I was hoping they would maybe put some shiny keys or some shiny tokens there or something. But one extra orb for that, not that good. But you know, if you're already buying tier 6, you obviously click that button because you get a free orb from it. So I don't think it's enticing enough. Like if you weren't already buying tier 6, you're not going to be enticed enough to start buying tier 6 now due to that change. However, if you were already buying tier 6 or above, or, you know, go for leaderboard or anything like that, hey, an extra orb, you're already going for leaderboard, so some extra orbs are guaranteed on top of the orbs you're already going to be getting. So it's nice in that regard, but it's not enticing enough to go out of your way for, that is for sure. Anyways, aside from that, that's the entirety of Soulforge. Just go over the team. So all the teams we will be mentioning right here are in the description below if you want to go and copy paste any of them. First, we're going to be starting with Invasions. Invasions is specifically the restriction of Goblins. So you specifically have to end up using various Goblins. Though, if I'm not mistaken, you are allowed to use any hero weapon. Let me just double check. I wonder if I forget the requirement for Invasion. But yeah, you are allowed to use any Goblin, which does mean you have allocation of any weapon. Though you're probably still going to be using a Goblin-based weapon just because of how ridiculously good Turnip is with a pure team of Goblins. But yeah, any Goblins in the game, likely Zhejian Goblins, as they tend to be where most of them even are, as well as you end up getting that little bit of extra team bonus there. So yeah, Invasion restriction for that, or I mean, Goblin restriction for that, but you're allowed to use any weapon. So for this, we're basically just running the Invasion troop in first slot, as you pretty much would with any of these events. We have a Truffle here, though ideally that would be a second Slughoarder if you happen to have it, depending on how many tiers you bought. I bought in a way where I only have one, so because I ascended it and maxed it and everything. So I simply just went with a King Gob Truffle there. However, if you do have double Slughoarder, it is better to go double Slughoarder. We're using Turnip here for just a mana accumulation. Highly advise again this weapon. Do not leave this week without it. And Flaming Ani just for a mana accumulation. For a low rarity team, we kind of do something somewhat similar, except we go and replace out our mana accumulator just for something cheaper, going with Truffle. And once again, if you do have a Slughoarder, you can go for 2 Slughoarders. And technically, if you are in a way where you have 2 Slughoarders, you likely have 3 Slughoarders. So technically, you could just go 3 Slughoarders into Turnip, and you'd be good to go if you happen to have them and don't want to go down the Truffle route. For the Underspire is specifically restricted to that of Zhejian. So anything within Zhejian, regardless if they're Goblin or not, you will be able to use. So there are a couple gimmicks you could technically do with Black Beasts and stuff like that. However, given that Goblins are so strong, just sticking with Goblin metas tends to be the way to go. For this, we're going with the insta-kill King Gob Truffle. Truffle is mostly just here to get that a little bit of initial mana, and because if something does die, it doesn't really matter that much. We have Resummon on Flaming Ani. And unlike Underworld, where it would matter a little bit more to put King Gob Truffle in first slot, because you'd want to make sure he lives your first slot and make sure he gets that attack and durability gain and everything. In something like Underspire, you actually don't care if your troops die. Like your first slot could die and get replaced, and it doesn't mean anything because the next battle you'll have this team completely reset. Unlike an Underworld where it doesn't get reset until you've completely finished the floor. So if you were to lose this troop and it gets summoned like into a useless goblin, then you're stuck with that useless goblin for the rest of the delve. That isn't the case in Underspire. It gets reset every single room, so you can build a little bit differently than you normally would for something like a faction event, for example, where you have to build a team a little bit safer to make sure you don't actually lose anything. Whereas in Underspire, you actually don't care if you lose anything. As long as you win quickly, that's the only thing that really matters for those battles. Similarly, we're running a somewhat similar build here, just going all in on Turnip, lowering the rarities. I am using a legendary here, however, King Gob Truffle is a Underworld legendary, really easy to get. If you just throw a couple thousand shards at the Amethyrax faction, you're likely to get it. If you don't have any shards, you can get them from the Tuesday event tomorrow, and then just use Truffle for everything throughout the week. But yeah, just doing that with the Turnip, really good combination. 100% go get Turnip. Next, we have ourselves the pretty standard Discards Avatar team. Very similar to the one actually that we ran last week. If you don't want to go down this route, you do have access to green. Purple. It is restricted to, green. I was right the first time. It's a restriction of brown-green, so anything under the brown-green category you can use. But of course, any colored weapon is also usable. But for this, we're basically just using Leprechaun. Pretty similar to what we used last time. You can go down the Rowan route or something similar if you so choose. And for the higher range, once again, we're bringing out the good old Hiking Iron, get Catharix. I actually really love this combo. It worked out way better than I was actually expecting. Well, I've used some variants of this team before. I've never actually used it until Underworld, until last weekend. And it was really fun to use. Hiking Iron, get Catharix. Great combination. Definitely make sure to get this Mythic eventually. Really strong. Next, we have ourselves the Pure Faction team. It is a nice, diverse team of 4 Gob Truffles. A little bit harder ever since he got nerfed. However, still not that bad. He has 20% extra stats this week, though, in all fairness. So does the enemy team for the most part. So it's not really making that big of a difference. But yeah, he just does a bunch of damage, auto extra turn. Generally, the strategy for running Pure Faction is you try to get 2 to 3 of them to full mana, and then you start casting them. You don't want to get 1 to full mana and then cast. The problem with that is you're not going to get as much mana cycling. You want to get minimum 2, ideally 3, and if you really can, all 4 to full mana first, and then start casting them. But the bare minimum for that is at least 2, ideally 3, before you start casting them. Do not start casting as soon as you get 1, as it'll be a little bit harder to get your overall mana. It is better to have multiple so you can keep extra turning, get your mana pools up, and then kind of go into a little bit of a pseudo loop. He won't infinite loop into himself, but he can loop enough that you're going to win the battles, which is the main thing that you're banking on there. And as long as you have at least 2 or 3 of them going to the final fight, you should be fine, ideally 3. And of course, if you can keep all 4 alive, that's even better. For the Thief class event this Thursday, basically all you have to do is just run, any standard quick kill team. For this, we're feeding a bunch of red, so if you don't have Dawnbringer, you can go Summer's Fury. But of course, if you have Dawnbringer, might as well go Dawnbringer. Any 50% Mana Star Hero class that gains +5 magic on it. and just quick kill it for the free battles. No point in spending any gems on Thursday class events, especially with how many gem sinks there are these days. As far as the trial event, we're basically sacrificing Prisoner's Fizzbang. This is mostly because we have a backup summon if we end up needing it. Turtle Cannon will be your main mana accumulator. He ends up creating a bunch of green, so you can do that to end up doing your Queen Grapple Pot. And the main premise of this event is going to be just spam Queen Grapple Pot until you win. She does 4 AoE damage into auto extra turn. Your whole goal is to keep feeding green mana into her, keep doing it over and over again. If you need backup summon, you then cast this guy if your princess happens to die. And you're mostly doing that to keep your cannon alive rather than anything else. You're basically sacrificing your princess, constantly casting your cannon to get both of these to full mana, casting this only once your first slot dies in order to put a meat shield in front of your cannon so your cannon doesn't die. And Queen Grapple Pot is 90% of your team, as it will be pretty much where all your damage is coming from, as you don't really have much else to end up using as far as damage output is concerned. So basically just keep spamming her over and over again until you win. And the higher your magic, the better it'll overall end up going. And lastly, while I do plan on covering a more dedicated video after I see what kind of XP, or not XP, but gold rates we can end up doing, as I haven't had really much of a chance to properly test them yet. But the new Slughoarder, he is basically the new gold farming meta. Back in the day, that used to be Skeleton Key, then Skeleton Key got nerfed, then people recently have been using like that one pistol weapon, which has like that double hit, but it doesn't have extra turn. This is a nice in-between. It's about as strong as like peak Skeleton Key. However, it only hits one enemy. However, instead of only extra turning on kill, it extra turns always. So regardless if you kill or not. Ideally, you would want to be in a situation where it is killing. Like, for example, this specific team, I believe you need to go to explore 10-ish, 9, somewhere around there, is where it can still end up one-shotting. You can't actually bring this specific team all the way to 12, as he does not have enough damage output. You can with Double Cedric. However, Double Cedric leads to the problem of how are you going to get your gold. You could go down the Leprechaun route, you could go down the Egg Thief route or something like that. Probably Egg Thief so you can spam a little bit more. She used to be really meta for these back in the day. The problem with that is you have a little bit of a slower start and it takes a little while to get rolling when you have that double Cedric, as you can only have one mana accumulator, and that one mana accumulator normally needs to be able to give you gold. As his whole gimmick is that he has a 1-to-1 boost ratio based on his amount of gold. So if you have one Cedric, that now made your cap 200. So in this particular situation, he'll be able to hit up to a 259, which is not bad at all. And with double Cedric, that would be a 359, which, as many of you know, is probably, or not probably, but as long as you don't have spell reduction, is enough to one-shot Explore 12, the highest level Explorer currently available. So, I don't know, we'll have to mess around with it, still test around, but this is one that you could be using up to whatever Explorer you can one-shot it with, which I believe is Explore 10-ish or so, which does mean you still have access to niches and stuff off of that. So, yeah, not bad. I haven't actually tested the exact gold rate per hour, and of course that can change drastically based on what VIP bonus you have. But overall, we'll be covering him a little bit more in depth once we can get the rates and everything else as far as what you could do, and just kind of mess with a few more teams. But if you want to mess with anything now or just mess around with him, yeah, great option. He's basically the new gold farm meta. I might even need to go buy another tier just to make sure I have more than one copy of him, because I do only have one copy of him right now, so I might have to splurge a little bit of gems to get a little bit extra, as obviously there might be teams that end up incorporating multiple of him. Even if you're not using Cedric, you can kind of go down that route. The one Cedric with one of him is probably fine as well. But you could also do like one Cedric into two of him or something similar and only using one mana accumulator. There's obviously a lot of ways to go about it depending on how you want to go. Because unlike Hero in the past, where you had to run like Skeleton Key or Pistol, you only had one. You were restricted to one. Now with Slughoarder, you do have the option of running 2, 3. I highly doubt 4. There'd be no way to really properly function with 4, but it is possible to run 2 or 3 of him, which is something we haven't really been able to do in the past with things like Skeleton Key and such, because it's on Hero, so you can only run 1. You're forced to have to use 1. Whereas having multiple options now could change how you incorporate the team, since you could double up on it. So it'd be interesting to see exactly what it can ultimately do. And definitely worth experimenting with, as it is a really, really strong troop, and even is shiny. So you'll guarantee, as long as you go do the invasion event this week, be able to get it to shiny level 1, which ends up making his mana cost go from 12 to 11, even more of incentive to running 2. And if you ever get it to 2, he gets some kind of extra effect. And at 3, he goes down to 10 mana cost with that special effect. So really, really strong. Has a lot of potential going forward. Obviously, it's going to take a while to get it fully shiny. Even if you bought the money pack from last weekend to get like that 5 extra tokens for him, it's still going to take forever to get all the keys to roll into him. There's like, what, 32 shiny cards now, because I believe last week's got shiny, this week's got shiny. So it's going to take a while to max him out. However, when we eventually do, he will be very strong. And he already is very strong. He doesn't need to be shiny to have that, but obviously him being shiny definitely is beneficiary to him. It's by far the strongest shiny card we have available at this current moment in time. Also, I went over so many things, and I'm almost about to wrap up. I completely forgot to even mention the big thing that's been staring us this entire time. Adana Legends Reborn is this week. For whatever reason, I thought it was next week. But yeah, make sure to do this event. A lot of great stuff here. For example, if you go do all the 5 little redo of the quest lines, I'll be reading through that tonight on stream. But if you redo all 5 of the quest lines, you will end up getting the Bork pet. Bork gaining 5 to all stats, really good. He's obviously a mass mana accumulator, basically like Thrall, Mirrorlift, stuff like that. So him having 5 to all stats, really great. Mostly the magic, obviously. Really, really nice. So you'll be able to get that for free just from doing that storyline battles. The other one that you'll be able to get for free, unfortunately not that useful, is just a Clockwork Knight upgrade. However, these other 2 are, for 1,350 gems, you can max out the Tesla pet. So the Tesla pet, of course, Tesla doesn't use magic, and she barely uses her durability or attack. However, she does utilize her armor, so you will be able to get a little bit extra damage for Tesla. She's already so ridiculously strong, so this isn't much of a buff. However, any buff on Tesla to how good she already is kind of nice. Even though she doesn't get to fully benefit off of most of these stats, it is an already strong troop becoming even stronger, so that's nice. And if you do want to go for the money pet, those will be available in the future for free. However, if you do want to go for the money pet, there's the good old Tina 9000. And as far as Tina 9000 is concerned, it actually gets to use all the stats. So Tina 9000 uses the attack because it has armor boost ratio off of its final trait. It uses its armor because it's in first slot, plus it has armor boost ratio for its skull damage. It uses HP because it has spell reduction, so both its HP and armor gets used for the spell reduction 50%. And it uses its magic because it has a really strong true damage attack, meaning it actually gets to utilize all 4 of the stats it's getting. So honestly, one of the better ones that we've ended up having access to as far as those bonuses are concerned. I'm probably going to skip on it, though I have been so absurdly unlucky on trying to find the other one I skipped on. Because we end up in skipping on Infernus Imp, and for whatever reason, I still have not found this thing. I have no clue how. It's been out for like a year. But, yeah, I'm not sure if they're just rare or something, but it just refuses to want to come out. It is in drop table, though. They do indeed come back to drop table. Similarly, that one will too in like 6 weeks after the fact. Yeah, I'm not sure what's up with that, but you will be able to get in the future, so you don't have to spend money on it, though it would make it more convenient to get if you want to go and like pet or max it or something in the future. Anyways, guys, I think that is now officially everything throughout the week. So a lot of things. We got Vault events. We got basically the first ever chance we really have to properly farm shiny keys. And overall, a lot to look forward to. So if you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Tonight we'll be messing around with a billion different events. We'll be reading through the entirety of the good old Adana storyline, one of the earlier ones in the game. I think they reworked it a couple times since then as well, because it's one of those really like early quest lines. I'm actually really curious to see what the Broken Spire one's going to be, because they've reworked that one more than probably like any other one in the game. So because that's the first one anyone ever gets introduced to when they first, start up the game, is you start out in Broken Spire, and Adana normally being the second one. So it'll be interesting to see, because we have the Adana one this week and then the Broken Spire next week. Aside from that, then again, we're not actually going to see the Broken Spire one next week. We don't have a Legend Reborn for it. But anyways, or not the Legend. Gosh, there's too many events going on. I'm confusing all the names for all the various events. Too many events. But anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone. And thanks for watching.